Hello and welcome to a course building an simple API using Node.js. Now we are going to go through a step-by-step guide on how to create a simple API using Node.js and Express.js, which is a popular framework for building web applications and APIs with Node.js. Here is an example of how the final project will look like. We'll have routes in here which will give me routes to API ID, and I'll have the index where I'm going to run the basic server. We'll also look at how to run these in on a postman and call those APIs and look at the request coming back. Also for variable input, we'll probably see how we handle those based on different IDs there. So let's get started with this project. So first step is, of course, to look if we have Node.js installed. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the Node.js website. If you have not installed Node.js, this is where you can go and get Node.js and npm. So you can go to the download section. Also, it will show you how to install stuff. Depending on which machine you have, you can do that. Next, I'm going to go here to my terminal and just check if I have Node installed. So I have Node installed. Do I have npm, which is Node Package Manager, installed? And that I have. So I have both of them that I need. Next, I have created a folder on my desktop called as Node Projects, and inside that there is nothing. So this is the folder. No, this is not the folder. This is the Node Projects folder, and inside that we don't have anything right now. So it's empty folder. This is where I'm going to create my API, first API, basic API project. So what I'm going to do is, instead of doing it from there, I'm going to just use this make directory command and call it my API. I'm going to go inside my API project. So this is where our API will be initialized. So now to initialize a Node project, you use the Node Package Manager and say init -y. What init does is it will ask you all the questions one at a time about how you want to set up your project. But if you say -y, it will mark yes to everything. You can go and test it out without -y and see what it does. So this is the name. It will ask what version you want, description, all these things. So if you want to have something different, you can skip the -y and do it manually. Now that I have it here, let's open this in Sublime Text. So if you see, my package.json is ready. Next, what we want is, we'll be using express.js, which you can also look at Express.js website. This is, as it says, fast, unopinionated, minimalistic web framework for Node.js. So that's what we are going to use. We'll also use NodeMon, which is optional. NodeMon is, I'm going to open that too. NodeMon is a tool that helps develop Node.js applications by automatically restarting the Node applications when file changes in the directory are detected. So you don't have to go restart the server every time. It will detect it and it will restart them as and when you make changes to your project. So let's go back to our terminal, and here let me clear it out. And here on the same folder, I'm going to say npm install, and I want express. You can confirm that this has been installed by looking at your package.json file. It will show you what version got installed. Next, I want to install I'm going to say save to dev nodemon. So this is what I want. That will be installed. I'll probably see that installed. And then so this is for development reasons, so that's why it says dev dependencies, because I said save as dev. Next, let's create a file inside index.js, called as index.js inside my API. I can right click and create a new file, or if you want, you can always do touch index.js right here, and it will create that file for you. There you go, index.js. Now inside this, let's add the basic server code. The basic server code, now if you want to create an express server, I need an express constant object where I will say require express. So that will get me handled to express server. Next, I will say constant app. This is how you initialize the server, express server, by saying express, calling the express function. Next, I need a port to run this. Now you can use any higher number ports that you want. So I'm going to use 3000 as the port number. and that's the very commonly used. You'll probably see it in all the examples everywhere. 3000 is the most common development port that is used. Next, I am going to run my first API. So this is a get API where I'm saying every time user calls the root, which is localhost 3000 in this case, or whatever your web address is, when you call that web address, the home page, it will give me a request and a response object. It's an anonymous function here, where what do you want to do inside this function once someone calls this. So what should the server respond with? So I'm going to say the server will send some text back as a response called as hello world. So this is your hello world API, let's call it that. Now next, finally, to start the server, I'm going to say app.listen, which port am I listening for request. This is 3000 port. So every time some request comes, listen to for those requests on that particular port, and when you start listening, just to know that if the server is running or not, I'm going to just say server is running on http ://localhost, and then to give my port number, I'm going to use the templating, sorry, this one, so it shows the, I can use the dollar port inside, so I don't have to do concatenation, and this is closed here. Perfect. So that's what will be posted out when I run the server. So let's run this server. So to run another one direct way of running this server is I can just say node index.js and it will run, and if I open this in my browser, it will show this. Also, you can use Postman. You can download Postman, and inside Postman you can make API requests. So I'm making a get request to this particular post, send what is the response, hello world. So that's, and we're going to use Postman quite a lot in future because we will be writing more APIs. So this is a good practice to have this, and I'm going to show you as and when we use how to use this. It's always good to create a account because that will help you sync across different machines if you're using different machines. Since I don't want anything here that I'm doing needs to be synced, so I'm gonna leave it. Now another way to run this, I mean, this is one way. Then every time I change something, I'll have to go and restart the server. For example, if I say hello one world, it will not update, so I'll have to go and run again. So instead of that, you can also use nodemon index.js, command not found. So I guess nodemon was not properly installed. Let's see what is the problem here. So I found out that nodemon was not installed globally. So what you can do is you can run this command sudo npm install -g force nodemon. So what it's doing is it's going to install on the global version. So it will be on the entire machine. So wherever you want, you can run it. So I'm going to do that and then run this again index.js, and if you see, the server is running. Now if I run it, if I go back to my code, change it, it will automatically update. You don't have to run the server again and again. Another way of directly running these scripts from your uh, from your uh, from your code here is by using the script stack. So we have scripts here which has test here. I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to say whenever user says start, it will run node index.js. These are deployment scripts. So whenever you deploy, let's say if I want to deploy dev on a dev machine, I'm going to say node mon index.js. So usually when you use like servers and stuff, if you have this start, what happens is it will automatically start it as soon as you upload your scripts. So that's the best part. So I can go here now, close the server, and instead of running that, I can say npm run dev. So it will run my nodemon command and keep the server running. So this is what happens on machines or servers which support Node.js implementation. Now next, let's create routes for the API. So usually it's better to keep your scripts out of your routes out of this particular index.js file. For that, first let's go into the project. Let's shut down everything. Let's say I'm here in the root folder, so I'm going to create a directory here mkdir. I'm going to call it routes. So routes are like, right now I'm just looking for slash, but what if I want to look for slash test? What will happen? It will give me an error. I mean, right now the server is off, but it will give me an error saying that that thing doesn't exist. So using routes, you can give all the different routes. You can give them in app.index.js file itself, but it's better to keep it outside in a different folder, because sooner or later you will have a lot of APIs, and then that will uh, make your code look more disorganized. So I'm going to create this, and inside this I'm going to create touch routes slash routes.js. So this will create that file inside my routes folder, the routes.js file. Now some basic route, let's set up some basic routes here. So I'm going to first say constant express equal to require. The reason I'm using express is, I'll tell you in a second. The reason I want handle to express is because when you create your routes or router, in this case, you have to use express dot router class to kind of initiate that router. So once I have that, let's make a simple API call called as router dot get. If someone calls for, let's say, slash API, it will give me request and response object and an anonymous function, which I can just say response dot. I can send JSON back instead of sending a message. I can send because APIs give you JSON data back, so that's how what I'm mimicking here. So this server will send a message back saying welcome to the API, something like that. So this is my basic response back. Whenever someone makes a get request, I'll give back a JSON data back. Now another get route with, let's make one with parameter. So I'm going to say router dot get. Inside this, the user or whoever the user of this API is calling the API with a particular ID. So they're passing like some number or some text, something they're passing with the API. So I'm going to say depending on whatever that is, like it might be API 13, API 15, something like that. So for that, you can just do colon and ID. So it will catch all those requests which come with API slash whatever that number is or text is, and I'm going to catch that. I'm going to take that ID inside a constant. I'll call it, so it will also available in the params dot ID, and then I'm going to response dot JSON. I'm going to pass back a response. In this case, I'm going to call it message colon. I'm going to use the special quotes, and I'll say you requested data for ID, and the ID is dollar. Inside that I can add that ID parameter and send it back. So this is a nice way of looking at how different types of, like, think about it, you make a blog post and it has like 100 blogs, and every blog has an ID 1 200. So then you can say slash blog slash number, and that will. Now to make it part of the entire module, I'm going to say module, this my entire module products or the project. You have to do sorry, I can't do multitasking. Module.export exports equal to router. So I'm gonna export this to the main project. So also inside index.js we'll have to add in here. I am going to import that route by saying constant API routes equal to require, and I'm going to pass that route location. I'm going to say it's in routes slash route. That's the file, right? Routes dot route slash route. So that's that. You don't have to specify JS. You can just do route slash route, folder name, file name. So that's how you can import the routes into the main project. For this here, I am gonna just say whenever. So also I'll get rid of this, and I'm gonna say here app dot use whenever they call any URL with this API routes. So once I import this, next I'm going to say use the routes for this application. So only all the URLs, all the routes are inside this routes folder. That's what I'm specifying. So if you want to give that slash here, now if you see there's no slash, so it might give you an error, but it has slash API slash API ID, so it will only work for this. So let's go ahead and test it out. Routes dot not npm run dev. It's gave me an error saying that this is not fine. Let's see, use up, give a, try again. Oh, I think spelling mistake. Router, perfect. I mean, it's restarting the server. If you see, every time I do that, I don't have to actually restart it, but I just do it by habit. So I'm going to go here and run this. It says nope, not available. Nope, not available. How about API? Yes, see, you've got the JSON API and give 43. You requested for ID 43. Similarly, I can run this in here. I'm not going to get anything. It says error. If I say slash API, run this, I'll get the message. If I say API slash 34, send, it will give me your requested data ID is 34. So this is a basic way of creating API. So if you just want to create a mock server or mock data, this is the best way or quickest way to create an API on your local machine and run it. This will help you test out all your functionalities. Also, it gives you all the errors and warnings in here. And that concludes our project where we created a basic simple API and saw it in test. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you with answers as soon as possible. Thank you.